time to get Pops out the corner, man. Episode 47 of the Slipping Away Podcast. Let's get it. A lot of fights to talk about today, man. But before I get into anything, I just want to go through, not this past Saturday, but 2 Saturdays ago, the fight between Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter. I'm really not a fan of the stoppage and how Kenny Porter handled the end of the fight and the stoppage, but I'm going to get more into that in a little bit. The fight was 50-50, for most of the fight. I was a little surprised at how weird of a matchup stylistically it was. There was, like a lot of Shawn Porter fights, there's a lot of holding, but I think Terence turning southpaw for the majority of the fight definitely had something to do with that. It created a level of awkwardness for Shawn getting on the inside, and I don't know if it really necessarily helped Terence offensively, but it kind of made a lot of what Shawn was doing offensively not that effective. And then I think I may have even had Shawn up around. I had it 5-4 one way or the other going into the 10th. And then so Terence drops him once. He gets right back up. He does take a little bit more punishment and he goes down again, and you can see him really punching the canvas. And then all of a sudden the fight is done and Kenny Porter calls off the fight. And at the time that they stopped it, I kind of thought the ref had stopped it, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck? I thought it was way too soon. Particularly with how close the fight was going into that round. And with the kind of fighter that Shawn Porter is, I was just like, yo, how are you not going to give this guy a chance to respond to this moment? And then in the post-fight interview, Kenny Porter is talking about, my son wasn't prepared for this fight. The post-fight presser, I saw him say at one point, like, I came into the fight ready to stop it. Like, I was going to stop it, and I thought it was real. Honestly, I thought it was fucking weak, man. I thought it was pretty fucking weak. First of all, I thought he was pretty disrespectful of his son in the way he was like, yo, you weren't ready, but you're his trainer. That's also your job. It's also your job to get him ready for that moment, to get him ready for the biggest fight of his career. And somehow, in a close fight against one of the pound for pound best on the planet, the going gets rough for a second and you pull the plug, I don't know. That's kind of fucked up to me. And I would have liked to have seen, and look, was that going to come at some point? Maybe. Right? But you never know what you're preventing, when you don't give your fighter the opportunity to respond to that moment. Like, the first fight between Pacquiao and Marquez, Pacquiao drops Marquez 3 times in the first round. If Nacho Beristain had said, you know what, you're not prepared for this fight, I don't want to see you take more punishment, we wouldn't have had 4 of the greatest fights, one of the best rivalries of all time, because, Nacho believed in his fighter to respond to that moment. And if me knowing Shawn Porter and his whole career, I'd be pretty confident that he's going to respond. And if I genuinely felt like he couldn't, that's when I throw it in. But it almost felt like, to some extent, to me, it seemed like Kenny Porter was stopping the fight to make a point. I don't know what that point was, but he was trying to make a point to Shawn. And to me, that's unprofessional. Which is a big part of why, I think there are cases where it does work. But I think in many cases, having fighters having their dads in the corner doesn't really work. It's too connected. They're too interconnected to look at what's happening objectively with their fighters. So a lot of times you'll see something like this where something gets stopped too early, or you'll see things that get stopped too late because, they're not going to throw the towel in on their son. You know what I mean? Perfect example is Gabe Flores' last fight. I thought he took way too much punishment in that fight. There was multiple times where they could have thrown that in, and his dad didn't. And he had like almost like a critical, reply to it in the post fight. There's a part of me that feels like Kenny Porter held Shawn Porter back from his potential in that fight. He really did. I think if somebody more measured and less emotional and just more strategy oriented, let Shawn get through that round and talk to him in between. He's earned that. He's one of the best welterweights of his generation, and he's fought all the best guys of his era. He's earned that, And I just think it's unfortunate that the going got tough and Kenny Porter went, nah, he's not ready. Like, of course he's ready. This is not like some regional amateur tournament. Like, this is your son, one of the best fighters in the world, fighting one of the best pound-for-pound fighters of his generation. Like, this is where you got to really fucking believe, And then Shawn retires after the fight. There's a part of me that is like, that's weird. There was just something weird about it to me, man. It felt not planned, but it was just kind of like, would he have done that if the towel hadn't been thrown in? If he had been able to finish that fight a little bit more on his own terms. You know what I'm saying? But aside from how I feel about Kenny Porter and how he handled the fight and how he treated his son, who's a tremendous fighter, this actually was not entirely the performance I was expecting from Terence. Because Shawn did a lot of good things in this fight. He had a lot of good movement. He did a good job of kind of throwing to the body when he could. His jab was good. His movement was good. He was a lot more measured than he's been in a lot of his fights, Shawn. So Terence, I feel like, was kind of waiting for more counter opportunities that weren't really coming. And then when he would lead, he was kind of having the same awkwardness that Shawn was having. So there was nothing dominant about it. But ultimately, it's a great win, and it's the first time he's kind of cracked, fighting a top 5 welterweight. And truth be told, I think that he probably was going to stop Shawn for the most part. I think what was probably going to happen next was it was going to, that the confidence, the momentum from those 2 knockdowns was going to allow Terence to take it up even one more notch than he did in the 10 rounds before and in the 10th round. I think he's a guy like that where he builds as the fight goes on, and this is one where you saw it's so subtle. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't even really have to be winning rounds like that to do it, but he's just slowly breaking you down physically and mentally. He's getting a read on what you want to do, what's making you uncomfortable. And when the moment is right, he knows how to capitalize on that in a fucking meaningful way. And he's a great fighter. So the obvious fight that everyone's been talking about for like 3-4 years now is him and Spence. And I hope that happens, obviously. I think in light of, the Pacquiao fight sort of being out of the mix, I would like to see Crawford fight Ugas. Ugas just beat an all-time great, and put him into retirement. And even though that's like you got the big fight already, I think that, athletically, he deserves a shot at either Spence or Crawford, either before or after they fight each other. I think the Pacquiao win is a win of a big enough magnitude that I think it should put him in a different, kind of conversation. I don't know that it has, but, for example, I have him in my top 10 pound for pound. If you look at, the info section of my YouTube channel, I keep an updated top 10 pound for pound. I got Ugas in that top 10 because I think that win is really significant. And again, I think that that's a win that is better than any of the wins that either Spence or Crawford have. Now, Spence has fought more elite welterweights, but I think that beating Manny Pacquiao in the way that he did is a better win, definitely, than any of the Terence Crawford's wins, because Terence really has only fought a handful of elite fighters and one elite welterweight, being Shawn. And I just think that Ugas deserves a crack at one of those guys. He should be in the mix for a big fight. But I do think that Terence proved that, at a minimum, he proved, he doesn't just pass the eye test. He can break down an elite level welterweight over time and get him out of there. You know what I'm saying? And no one's really been able to get Shawn out of there, regardless of how you feel about the stoppage and whatever. We've never seen Shawn go down twice in the same round. So he was able to assert a level of physical dominance, towards the end of that fight over Shawn that no one has. Spence hasn't been able to do it. Nobody's been able to do it. So in that sense, I think it puts him kind of a leg above every other welterweight. And it does, for me, solidify his top spot as the top welterweight. But I still don't have a problem with saying Spence is number one, because he's just fought overall, I think, better opposition. And I saw in the post-fight presser that Terence said that he's going to be leaving Top Rank. So hopefully what that means is that all of these fights are going to, be a lot more possible in the coming months. Hopefully. We'll see. And speaking of pops in the corner, George Kambosas Jr., this past Saturday, winning a unanimous decision over Teofimo Lopez. I was just as shocked as anybody. I've seen Kambosas fight a couple of times. He's a good fighter. He's definitely a good fighter. I didn't think he was, a soft touch, but I definitely didn't think Teo was going to lose this fight. And, it was really amazing. He came out in that first round, Lopez, and was just swinging. Just swinging and reaching and swinging and reaching. And, some of them were landing, but most of them weren't. It was all kind of predictable. And you could even see Kambosas, he wasn't stressed out about it. He was kind of ready for it. And then at the end of the first round, Kambosas lands the perfect overhand right and puts Teo right on his ass. And it changes the whole mood of the fight. The whole mood of the fight changed after that knockdown, because Lopez clearly thought he was just going to walk this down, body him, out physical him, and just get him out of there quick. And in an attempt to do that, not really respecting what this guy's bringing to the table, he got floored. You know what I mean? That's boxing. That's what can happen. If you don't respect your opponent, they'll make you fucking respect them. So after that, it was kind of a slow build. But from the second round on, it just felt like Kambosas got a little bit more of an understanding of what he wanted to do and was just letting his hands go a little bit more every round. And Lopez's approach never changed. He spent the whole fight reaching and swinging with wild shots. There was so many times where he's just like, he wasn't using his feet to get near him. He was reaching with his jab. He was reaching with everything. I mean, it was just straight up slot. To me, he really did look bad. It wasn't like a off night. He looked bad. He didn't look focused. And again, every round he's going back to his corner and his pops is telling him you got to walk him down. Good round. You're not losing this fight. And then after the fight, they're both talking like it was, fucking robbery. I'll get more into that in a little bit. So down the stretch of the fight, Lopez starts to get a little momentum, catches Kambosas, puts him down in the 10th round. And there's definitely, there's possibly an opportunity there for Lopez to stop him, and he doesn't take it. And Kambosas gets through the round, and if anything, closes the show really strong, and just had his number. When I was watching, I was like, this is just two different, hunger levels. You know what I'm saying? This is two different levels of focus. Kambosas is just in the zone, for real in the zone. And Lopez is kind of, maybe there's a little ring rust in there. But I think really what it is every time he was going back to this corner, his dad's not giving him real boxing advice. You got to step with a double jab. You got to get body to body to him, and you got to make him feel you physically. You got to make this a dog fight, and telling him how to get to that, because it could have been there for him. But the combination of Kambosas boxing so well and him not really getting good advice in the corner and kind of smiling and winking and sticking his tongue out, and then after the fight, I won 10 rounds of this fight. Bro, he maybe won 4 rounds. I mean, tops he won. For me, tops he won 4 rounds. You know what I'm saying? He really kept his hands in his pocket and just could not close the distance on this guy. And there was just these big gaps where he's not letting anything go. Just looking for the perfect shot, looking for that one shot that's gonna, that's really gonna hurt him. And it wasn't there. He wasn't giving it to him. Lopez was going to have to create that. Kambosas wasn't going to give it to him. And so, I think I scored the fight. I might have even scored it 116, 110. Honestly, I just thought that Lopez was so ineffective and unwilling to close the distance, and his offense was not consistent. It just wasn't consistent, and Kambosas was. He was letting his hands go and landing good, clean shots. He definitely landed the cleaner shots. And I think Lopez's face kind of told that story. That, with all the fucking, he's not hurting me, but, the machismo bullshit, your face kind of tells the story of who won. Especially in that kind of fight. And it was a good fight. But the combination of how poorly he fought, and then what a shitty fucking loser both of those guys were, I just lost a lot of respect for them. And I think that's a perfect example of, he beat Lomachenko, and that was a great performance. I don't know if he really beat him, but whatever. He got the win in it, and he did so much better than anybody thought he was going to do. It was tremendous. And then he doesn't fight for 13 months. And I don't know what's going on for him in that 13 months, but coming back and expecting that, after this, he's looking past being at 135. He's going to fight Josh Taylor. He's definitely just looking beyond where he's at, and this is what can happen. And now you go to the back of the fucking line. You know what I mean? You just do. When you're that heavily favored and you lose, you're going to go to the back to the fucking line a little bit. And this is also why it's so important, the 4 kings at lightweight or whatever. It is important that these guys fight each other, because the longer you're around, the more tough guys you fight, you are going to lose. That's boxing. And this is a sport nowadays where having that one, does hurt your branding a little bit. And it shouldn't, but that is part of it. So, you lose out on good fights like Lopez Haney, Lopez Garcia, Lopez Tank Davis, when you're unwilling to make those fights while they're hot, they don't stay hot forever. They just don't. People are going to lose interest. Guys are going to get bigger, move up in weight, which also, I hope Lopez does move up in weight now. He's clearly way too big to be at lightweight. And I think if he's going to do anything really moving forward, he's going to have to move up to 140. I think he's got to get a new trainer. I think he really does need to get a new trainer. I don't know, moving up in weight is going to be great for him. But if he's not getting like some better advice in the corner, some more level-headed boxing advice, this fight threw me for a loop. I'm really like, I don't know what the fuck this kid does now. You know what I mean? It wasn't, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it wasn't really even on my radar that Kambosas could give him a tough fight. Maybe that's me underestimating Kambosas, but anything I've seen from Lopez, I just figured that he'd be able to make an adjustment. Even if Kambosas was doing some things well, which he did everything well, I kept thinking that Teo was going to kind of see his moment or see the thing that was going to get him there. And I thought in round 10, he almost found it, and he just couldn't sustain it for that last 3 rounds to, really close the show strong. So I truly have no idea what's next for him. For Kambosas, I mean, he's got, I think, 3 of the major belts now. So he's become the guy. I mean, I would love to see him and Lomachenko. I would love to see him and any of those other top guys, Tank, Garcia, the winner of Haney and Jojo Diaz, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. I would love to see him against any of these guys, and I think his stock has to go up enormously, even though I think Lopez's poor performance was a big part of it. But his stock has to go up because he stayed confident and calm, in that line of fire, and fucking took over the takeover. He took over the takeover. That's exactly what he did. But I think that unless it's a Lomachenko and his dad kind of situation, it's not good to have your pops in the corner, man. It's just not. It doesn't work. It can get you to a certain level, and then, it's like it works when things are going good. I don't think it works that great when things are going bad. And in boxing, that's always going to happen at some point. Shit's not always going to go your way. And I would think about somebody like Roger Mayweather, in a round where, like, maybe Floyd didn't have the best round. He never freaked out. And that's not his dad. That's his uncle. And it's still family. But even he was able to kind of step back one and just kind of like calmly tell him what he needed to do. And I don't see guys like Kenny Porter and Teofimo Lopez's pops. I don't see them as those guys. They're very connected to their son's success emotionally. It's a part of them. And I don't think they can see the forest from the trees. I really don't. So also that night, Stephen Fulton got a majority decision over Brandon Figueroa. That's one of those fights, man. There was not one round of that fight that was easy to score or like a clean win for me. To me, this was like the perfect example of a fight that needed to be a draw. It's unfortunate that, and I'm not even saying it's a robbery, but I do think it's unfortunate that one of them would be acknowledged as the winner in this fight. It really came down to what do you like more. Figueroa was pressing the whole fight, landing good hard body shots. And Fulton was very effectively moving backwards and countering and landing, clean uppercuts, clean hooks. He fought a good moving back fight. And for me, it was back and forth and 50-50 basically every round. I don't even really remember how I scored it, to be honest with you. But to me, this is like textbook example of a fight that needs a rematch. 2 guys in their 20s that are in their prime, both had a belt. This is a unification fight. I don't think this is a fight that got its flowers the way it should have, because it was also a great fight. They put on a great fight. Their styles meshed perfectly. I also think that Brandon has one level of durability and he's a one level better defensively than his brother. I'm not saying he's a good defensive fighter, but he's better defensively than Omar. And I think that's part of why he's able to compete at a higher level than Omar ultimately was. You know, he's just a little more durable and the tiniest bit slicker about not taking everything right on the chin. You know what I mean? Brandon says he's going to move up to featherweight. I think that's a great move. I don't think this loss hurts him at all. You know, if he moves up to featherweight, I don't think it's going to even really take him that long to work his way up the ladder. And a fight with him and Navarrete, whew, that's a fucking matchup right there. Brandon Figueroa versus fucking Emmanuel Navarrete. Mark my words, that's going to be a fight in a couple of years. Maybe sooner than that. That's going to be one of the most exciting fights you can make in all of boxing. Brandon Figueroa and Leo Santa Cruz. Come on. That's a classic waiting to happen. So to me, you know, this kid's right in the mix to be fighting anybody at featherweight. And I think for Fulton, he's really a tremendous fighter. 122 is not the very best weight class right now. You know, 118's got a little more talent, and 126 has got a little more talent. But I think that he's an extremely talented guy, you know, who is slick enough defensively to stay on the inside, but he's not afraid to stay on the inside and bang it out and kind of let his skills, you know, work him through those stretches, which is what he did in this fight. So, you know, there's not too much to say on this one, but it was a great fucking fight. And I hope there's a rematch, but there's another part of me that thinks that, you know, Fulton's a natural 122 pounder and Figueroa is probably a natural featherweight, if not more. You know, you could really see the size difference in this fight. I have no idea how he would make 122 pounds. The picture they had of him on Showtime, where he was like in his stance, the kid looked scary skinny. I mean, you could see his fucking organs moving around. So he's definitely due for a move up in weight, without a doubt. So next weekend, we got two big fights: Devin Haney and Jojo Diaz, and we also have Tank Davis versus Isaac Cruz. It was gonna be Rolly Romero. Fucking whatever, it's not anymore. I don't even really need to speak on the Tank fight. I would really, especially that he's fighting on pay-per-view, I'd really like to see him fight more elite level opposition. You know, Isaac Cruz is a tough guy, real tough guy. Never fought even close to this level. You know, Francisco Vargas, probably the best win he's got. I want to see if Tank is really going to be the guy. He's going to be a pay-per-view star. You know, he has to fight elite guys at 135. He has to fight elite level guys at 140. You know, I don't know if he's that big of a star. What would and he could make a fight with what's his fucking name, Mario Barrios. You know. How come he can't use that sway to make a fight with Josh Taylor? Like, you know what I'm saying? How come he can't use that sway to make a fight with Ryan Garcia? Like, there's other elite young fighters in their prime that he doesn't seem all that interested in fighting. Not him specifically, but, you know, that doesn't seem to be the direction that Mayweather and PBC are taking him. Hopefully we get to see those at some point. You know, I'm probably not going to buy this fight. It is what it is. But the Haney and Jojo Diaz fight, I mean, that's what it's all about to me. Fucking two young guys, both in their 20s. I think Diaz really in his prime. Haney kind of coming into his prime. You know, this is a great fucking fight. This is one of those where these are the kind of matchups that boxing needs. You know, two young guys that are not afraid to put it on the line. You know, that are both coming off some really nice wins. Diaz completely outboxed Javier Fortuna. Haney got a tough, hard-fought decision over Jorge Linares and got hurt in that fight and survived it and got through it. You know what I'm saying? And, proved that he's a really tough kid. I think that was the Linares fight was a big fight for his development as far as, when you fight guys at the elite level, what they're going to bring to the table. And I think that fight's going to help him prepare for this one. My gut is telling me that Diaz is going to win this fight. I know that's probably not a popular opinion, but my gut is telling me that Diaz has a little more experience fighting at this level, and he's, I think, shown for me to be a little more durable. I think Haney's a little bit chinny. Sometimes, to me, his game looks a little incomplete or a little immature. He'll be so sharp. He's got one of the best jabs in all of boxing already, and he'll be so sharp for stretches, and then it just sort of turns off for a little bit. And I think if he does that with this kid, he's going to be in trouble. I think that Diaz, between the fights with Fortuna, having that hard fight with Rakhimov, the loss to Gary Russell, and he has gotten some other excellent wins as well. I just think that he's proven at a higher level what he's capable of a few more times for me than Haney has. But if Haney is able to beat this guy and beat him clean and convincingly, it puts him in one of the top spots at 135 for me. Another perfect example of Diaz, being able to bust up a more technical boxer is the Tevin Farmer fight. And Farmer's one of the slickest, best defensive fighters in the whole sport. And Diaz completely broke him down. So, to me, almost stopped him. So if he can do that to Tevin Farmer, I think that there's some of that's going to translate over to Haney. But I also think that, particularly early, that Haney jab is so much to get past. And I think that was kind of what tripped Linares up for the first half, was like, how am I going to get past this fucking jab? And I think that until Diaz can figure that out, it's going to be Haney's fight. But I think overall Diaz is going to be able to break him down and get to him, maybe by decision, probably by decision, but maybe he stops him at some point late in the fight. I'm not saying Haney's taking this fight too soon, win, lose, or draw. I think it's going to help him to grow. But I just think that Diaz, based on that last performance against Fortuna, is really coming into his prime and is really at his peak as a fighter. So that's my prediction on that one. And that's episode 47 of the Slip and Weave podcast, you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, as always, and I'll see you next week. Peace.